How much did Satanism play into the picture there? Was that a big part of it? What was it all about?
A lot of that centered around Michael Aquino. The Omaha World Herald was run by Harold Anderson.
Okay.
He had a farm place outside of Omaha, and they would go out and have various things out at that farm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You talking about ritualistic kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
And some of the kids were brought out there, the ones that were kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that farmhouse played an important role.
So you'd surreptitiously shoot photographs?
Yes, I would do it for the purpose of basically having to protect my own butt. That's what Gary Caradori got killed over, was those pictures. The pictures I was getting were to get basically who's who and what's what.
Mm-hmm.
The kids they'd get them tooted up, and boys on boys, old men with boys. Occasionally they'd have girls. It was a lot of times the younger ones.
What about Warren Buffett?
Warren was in more than he would like to be known.
Yeah. Because I know DeCamp, his name shows up in DeCamp's book.
Yeah.
And, of course, everybody knows who Warren Buffett is.
Yep.
But he was involved in this level of this kind of stuff that was going on?
Yeah. You know, there's a few things going on right now that I personally know of that for investigations and things like that I cannot disclose. You will be hearing some things come in the very near future.
Okay, all right.
That are major.
Major?
Major.
Can you comment on what area they may be major in?
The who's who. The people who were involved in it, there's going to be heads roll. It goes way, way, way high.
Mm-hmm.
I probably said more than I should have at this point on that. People can look forward to a few things coming in the near future.
All right. So let's spend a little bit of time now talking about when you departed.
I was out in Washington, D.C., and Larry had sold me for the night. I was up in my room, and a guy walks in, and he came over to get friendly and friendlier, and I go, well, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And he says, oh, well, Larry sold you to me for the night. And I'm going, what? And he says, yeah, you're mine. And I said, well, let me go freshen up, you know. And I went in the bathroom, and luckily I'd left my clothes in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up crawling out and going to the airport. I left camera equipment and everything behind.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. Larry had provided me with an apartment where somebody supposedly committed suicide, but I would bet more strongly it was murder from what I'd heard later on.
Mm-hmm.
That was another one of those Wadman cover-ups.
Mm-hmm.
I went to an abandoned farmhouse. Well, this was in probably around June of '88.
Okay.
They raided the credit union. You know, Larry had a lot of power, and from what I was told, when he got out on parole, he was paroled to Washington, D.C., and went to work for the National Republican Party.
Mm-hmm. That's what I've heard, too.
So, this Franklin deal blew up, big in the news and that. I was an innocent bystander that saw too much.
Right.
I feared for my life, so I just kept out of sight. And I made the mistake of telling somebody who I thought was a friend where I was at. And he happened to have been an informant. Next thing I know, here comes the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
Mom and Dad got their house raided, not once, but twice.
Right. What were they looking for?
Basically, I think it was more of a harassment. I was living a couple miles away, and Mom told them where I was at. She thought it was, you know, the FBI, there's got to be good people, this and that and the next thing, and she had no idea what all was going on. Here comes the FBI in. They raided my house. They didn't even look. They just tore the stuff up.
What I'm concerned about is whether or not you had any inkling or suspicions that there were higher-level law enforcement officials who were, somewhat involved in this. They're covering it up.
Oh, I knew that from day one. They would be doing damage control on this something fierce. Most of what I had, most people did not know that I had. But just the fact that I had been there left a loose end. You know, I thought I was lucky to get out of there with my life.
What happens after that? I mean, after they raid the house, what happens to you?
I basically went to living in my van. I traveled all over the country. I didn't stay hardly anywhere more than about 3 weeks.
Rusty, have you ever been threatened with your life about talking about this or anything like that?
Numerous times. People who would basically come out of the blue and just start talking. They would introduce themselves, and then it was basically keep your mouth shut. People will die.
Why do you think that there's never been an investigation on this particular aspect of the Franklin business? None of this has ever been brought to light as far as any kind of grand jury or trial. Why do you think that is?
Too much juice. That's been the biggest problem, is a lot of these people are above the law. That may be changing soon.
Okay, let's bring it up to this Jeff Gannon thing. As most people know, Jeff Gannon was in the White House Presidential Press Corps. He was there on day passes, mere feet from the President, George W. Bush. Softball's a question. The media, other media constituents around him decide, well, let's find out who this guy is. They dig into his past. They find out that he was running a gay military escort service in the D.C. area. Now we've got people that are talking about the idea that Johnny Gosch may be Jeff Gannon. Do you think he is Johnny Gosch?
I'd put my money on it.
You would?
I met with Johnny out in Portland. This has been a couple years back. And there was something that was mentioned that was, wouldn't it be funny if, if somebody could get into the White House or, press corps or whatever.
What would be his motive for doing this?
Somewhat retaliation.
So kind of a payback.
Yeah. They put him through hell. That's plain and simple. They ruined this kid's life.
Yeah.
I know what he'd said about being found out. He didn't want to be known as, what everybody thought he was. He'd been forced into a life that was not what he'd normally have been in. They didn't want to be remembered like that. This was a way that he could get in and make it somewhat better. They swept it under the rug pretty quick. They're trying to get this quieted down. There's good reason for it.
This Gannon thing blows open the latter part of January. Sometime shortly after that, Hunter Thompson supposedly commits suicide. And, of course, Noreen mentions a guy named Paul Bishop that was arrested in the D.C. area for manufacturing child pornography. And then Gannon comes back after he disappears for a while. And the first article that he posts on his website is Fear and Loathing in the Media. What's your take on Hunter Thompson's suicide?
I don't think it was suicide.
Why do you think he would have been murdered? Does it have something to do with this?
I believe it does.
In what way?
It would be the snuff films. There's a very good chance that he's holding it over somebody. And somebody just decided that it's easier to get rid of him than to give in. I was on a private jet that landed outside of Las Vegas.
Nothing out there but military installations.
Yeah, it's called Area 51. Well, we landed out there. There was a group of people came. There were a couple Arabic, and they just shuttled the kids off the plane. They weren't quite coherent. I'm sure they'd been drugged.
Yeah.
And they basically went out and brokered these kids.
Have you ever, in your experience, been to the Bohemian Grove?
Yes.
What goes on there?
Well, everybody thinks your laws and that are made in Washington, D.C. Sorry to inform you, but most of them are done in Bohemian Grove.
Would it be fair to say that a lot of the clientele have connections to Bohemian Grove?
Yes, that would be very true. It's a very elite group of people. It's a very private place. They have their own security, and they are very good about keeping it secure. This is a place where some of the satanic things go on.
And parts of this have never been made public. And, Rusty, I want to thank you again for coming on the program and telling your story.
Well, thank you.
It's quite an incredible story, and, of course, it does corroborate a lot of what people are hearing about, some of this stuff. A lot of people think that when Larry King was arrested and put in jail, this whole thing was over, but I don't think so.
No. Larry was just the broker. They have ways of doing things that are just incredible. People would never, ever even imagine the way they can do away with people.
Yeah.
And make it look totally accidental.
Yeah.
And this comes from your military buildup. A lot of these things that they're doing are basically straight out of Hitler. When they went into Germany and they'd confiscate the records where they were doing these experiments when Hitler had it, they're doing the exact same thing now.
Right out of the book almost.
They're just following in their footsteps.